Okay, we're going to get started, folks, if you don't mind. We're going to start a little bit early because I know that what's really on everybody's mind is the Red Sox-Dodgers game. At least that was on my mind, but... So I thank you all for coming out on a Thursday evening. My name's Chuck Muth. I was Dennis Hoff's campaign manager for his assembly race down in Nye County and parts of Clark and Lincoln County. And, you know, obviously with Dennis's unfortunate, untimely passing away, he's obviously not going to be here. And Suzette, the general manager who would normally oversee such a conversation, she's just overwhelmed with everything she has to do, making the arrangements and whatnot. So I'm going to go ahead and stand in. We wish that the opponents who have pushed for this initiative to ban the brothels would have agreed to participate. They haven't, but if anyone here is on the yes side that would like to join us, we'd be more than happy to have you come up here and have you be part of the conversation. If not, then we pretty much know what the arguments are from their side, and I'm just going to throw them out to my right. Let me first introduce Alice Little. Hi, Alice.
Hi, everyone.
And this is Ruby Ray to my far right. And she doesn't care much about the baseball game at all. I told her we should wrap up in 7 minutes, and yeah. So those are the introductions, and we'll go through some of these questions now. We know that the sheriff, the Lyon County Sheriff, had a report that was issued last week. We've had a copy of it. We've gone through it. There are some questions, within the report that we want to address tonight also, and then we'll open it up to the floor. If you have any specific questions that we didn't cover in the initial Q&A, I'll come out to the floor, and well, no, you'll have the microphone, so we'll just ask and I'll repeat it, and we'll go from there. Does that work? Everybody good? Okay. So let's start with what we started with the last time when we did the first one. If Lyon County Question 1 passes and the brothels are banned, the legal brothels are banned, that means prostitution is going to go away, right?
No, not at all. Sex work is something that has existed in society since the dawn of time. It has been in every single society, every single civilization, and now it's here in America. The difference is that this time we've legalized it, we're regulating it, and we're using the taxation dollars to benefit our local community. This time we've got it right. So why do we want to change things? If the opposition was here, I would ask them, does this solve more problems than it creates? And the answer is yes, it does. This solves a number of problems that exist within the communities that do not have legal sex work. For example, a lot of communities that do not have legal brothels have a higher rate of STDs and STIs. Here in this county, we don't have that issue. It's just one of the many ways that the brothels contribute and help out.
So the problem with shutting down the brothels is that it'll allow the sex trade to go further underground, and we don't want it to go underground. It's better when it's out and visible, and even though some people might be uncomfortable with it being visible, it doesn't allow it to go into the seedy underground and allow girls to become invisible with actual sex trafficking and things like that. When you have brothels that are legal, we are accounted for, it's regulated as Alice said, and that's the way to do things. Not having it legalized is just letting things run rampant, and it just creates a lot more problems.
Okay, one of the arguments that I've seen over and over again is that even in the legal brothels, you ladies are being exploited, is what they're saying. You laugh, so you're not being exploited?
No, not at all. So let's actually talk about this for a little bit here. I'm curious, show of hands, who here actually knows what the definition of sex trafficking is? It's the hot button word at the moment, but how many people actually understand what sex trafficking truly is? We have a couple hands, but certainly not the majority. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what sex trafficking is and why it's not happening within our legal brothel system. Sex trafficking is when somebody is coerced or forced against their will, without their consent, into the sex industry. How we prevent that by having a legal industry is that the ladies choose and apply online to come and work at a legal brothel. They then have to go through a phone interview before they're even allowed to fly out, again, of their own free will. They're not paid to come out here. They actually have to buy their own ticket or drive themselves to our location. Once they arrive, they then have to choose to visit with the doctor, which is required by law weekly. Then they choose to go to the sheriff's office, do FBI fingerprint testing, complete a background check, and then are allowed to work legally on the floor. Even then, every time that they go to line up, it's a choice. Every time they choose to see someone, it's a choice. All of those things are choices, and when choice is present, it does not allow for sex trafficking.
So the question was, do I feel exploited? No, because I am a grown woman. Yeah. Oh, I don't talk as loud. Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. So I don't feel exploited because I'm a grown woman and I can make my own choices about what I want to do with my time, with my body, with my emotional labor, and all of that. I'm 27 years old. I started in the brothels when I was 20. That was of my own choice. I did research going into the brothels for 2 months. I got advice from friends and family about what they thought I should do. They were accepting and supportive, and I've had nothing but success within the brothel system, the legal brothel system. So no, I don't feel exploited. I don't feel like I'm being taken advantage of. I'm in control of everything in my life. And I am a full-time graduate student at UNR. I'm working on my master's, and I got my undergrad while working in the brothels. So I don't feel exploited at all. I feel like the opposition is in turn exploiting me because they're using me as a pawn in their game to close down my job and to take away my livelihood and the livelihood of hundreds of other working women and the staff that is employed by the brothels. So I do not feel exploited, and I know that all of the women that I work with would say the same. We're in control of what we're doing and our futures and what is going on in the brothels. Thanks.
And I know that you'll both probably agree with this. We see stories all the time in the news about pimps beating up prostitutes and abuse and violence and that sort of thing. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about the difference, but also just talk about other things where the opposition is conflating illegal prostitution and legal prostitution, and the difference is how the safety measures at the brothels for both you working there and the customers who come there.
Here in Nevada, we have something that is very, very unique. We are the only state with legal sex work. That means that we are an industry in of ourselves. What that also means is that the statistics and data about the illegal, independent prostitution world that the group is pulling from does not apply to us. They are looking at statistics from websites that market women in a way that is just awful. In fact, it's very similar to the way that the opposition would portray us as packaged meat. I don't know, did anybody else see those awful, awful ads? They were just so incredibly offensive and hurtful on a personal level, I've got to say. When it comes to who we are and what we do, we stand for something that is very, very different from what the opposition would tell you. We exist to help people, to heal people, to meet a need in this society for sex, for companionship, for intimacy, for care. All of those things are what happen in the legal world. Unfortunately, however, they're not presenting you with those facts. What they're choosing to do, however, is lift these statistics that don't even apply to our county, our state, our area, that have nothing to do with us. The fact that they've not done the proper research to actually go into a legal brothel and discover what we are and who we are about is just so unfortunate. And what it results in is a lack of education. And that's what we're really seeking to do here, is to let you guys know who we are and what we really are about. And as we continue through this program, we'll continue to talk about a lot of those points too.
So as for safety procedures within the legal brothels, there's a lot of them. First, we have panic buttons in our room. So if something were to happen with a client and he, was treating us in a way that we didn't want to be treated, or that we wanted to not have any further contact with him, we have a panic button. I've worked in the brothel since 2011. I've never once had to use my panic button. And I know most girls that I've worked with in 7 years have not had to use their panic button. Also, STI testing. So we get tested for STIs every week, blood for HIV every month, and then yearly for hepatitis. So we are much cleaner, safer, every one of those things than if somebody were to go to a bar and pick somebody up that way, which is kind of like the prevalent way that a lot of younger people are picking people up for sex. Also, we have to use condoms for every situation, and so they're required by law. The legal brothel system is clean, it's safe, it's regulated. And I know some of that stuff is kind of weird to talk about, and like I'm kind of like throwing it in your face a little bit, like, well, yeah, we use condoms and all of that. But it really is safe, and it really is clean, and it is a lot safer than the illegal sex world.
As far as a couple of statistics, there have been 0 cases of HIV transmission out of a legal brothel ever. Ever, period. And that's something that we are incredibly proud of. Another thing to keep in mind, too, is that at the legal brothels, the ladies have the ability to say no at any point in time for any reason that they choose, at any point that they so choose. And that's something that is a very unique freedom that we're very, very defensive over. When you legalize something, you prevent a lot of the negative consequences that would otherwise come with it. Like we saw back in the day of prohibition with alcohol. When we took away legalization of alcohol, did that make the bars go away? No, they just went underground. Instead, they started to be controlled by less than favorable folks. The system that we have now prevents a lot of those abuses. Because those regulations are already in place, it creates a scenario in which folks that would have less than honorable intentions don't feel welcome in our location. It keeps us all safe by the reputation.
Great, thank you. And I know this will be a little bit redundant, but I have seen the opposition's campaign recently has really been pushing this idea, equating what you do to slavery, and that you are being bought and sold, and that no human being should be sold. So just expand on that a little bit more too.
Absolutely. So, who here believes that when a minor goes to work, he sells himself? Okay, no hands. All right, couple hands. When a therapist sees a client, are they selling themselves? When a musician teaches a lesson, are they selling themselves? You have to consider what emotional labor is, and that's what we are doing. It's emotional labor. We provide a service. In the service world, we're not for sale. What is for sale, however, is our services. That's what we offer, just like any other service provider does, whether it be your nurse, whether it be a policeman, whether it be a music teacher or a coal miner. I've got to say, if you think that sex workers sell themselves and coal miners don't, you have a really skewed perception of what selling oneself is. I've never once felt in any scenario that I'm an object that is available to be purchased. And I'll tell you, there's no amount of money that could convince me to do something that I'm not comfortable doing. Instead, I offer services that I am comfortable doing, that I choose to offer willingly of my own volition. And by that note, it allows me to have complete control over my business, so this way I'm comfortable with everything that I do and everything that I offer.
And on that same side of things, professional athletes too, they tear their bodies apart with, everything that they're doing in order to make money. And so it's kind of the same thing. I'm providing a service, and yes, some of the time I do use my body for that, but I'm also using my mind. I'm also performing high levels of emotional labor with my clients, all of those things. And as for the slavery part, no, like I can say no whenever I want to. And just like Alice, I cater towards the experiences that I like to give and I'm best at. I don't perform any kind of services that make me feel uncomfortable. They aren't even on the table for somebody to purchase. And so I only do what I want to do, and that's really important for people to know, is that every woman in the brothels has that choice. Every woman has kind of her own brand and way of doing things that works best for her, and kind of markets her services towards the clients that are best for her and suit what she's best at and likes to do with her services. So it's really important to like differentiate between all those things and realize those things, because it's really important in understanding the work that we do and that we are there by choice and we're not slaves.
Thank you. We can applaud not being slaves. That's good. Okay, another argument is that if we ban the brothels and make them illegal, then that would save the taxpayers money because you wouldn't have to pay for the regulatory process and the enforcement process. So could you address that, please?
Absolutely. When it comes to the economic impact of the brothels, there's a lot of things that folks should be aware of. For example, did you know that we're the ones that pay for the vehicles for the police station each year? Yeah, that comes from the money that we pay in our fines and fees. Another thing to be aware of, too, is that the cost of regulation does not exceed the financial impact that is coming into the county. It actually results in us having a significant amount of leftover income. 30% of the discretionary budget for this particular county comes from the local brothels. That's something that we need to be aware of. So what happens if we close the brothels? There goes 30% of the discretionary budget. I guess the cops are going to ride the wild Mustangs and bicycles around town. I mean, I saw a few of those like lying around in the desert. Like, we have to think that the big picture is important. And overall, we contribute far, far more than that we would take. Additionally, the sheriff is asking for funds to update his regulatory process. And that's something that we're actually excited about and looking forward to working with him on doing. For once, for the first time, we're going to have the opportunity to work side by side with the sheriff's office and educate them a little bit as to how things operate. Recently at the last conference, the sheriff said something that was terribly inaccurate in regards to how our process works. He claimed that the ladies meet with clients outside of the brothel, and that's simply not true. All clients have to meet with the ladies first on location. That is absolutely required. So for him to say that there's a scenario where we're meeting somebody else and that may be dangerous is simply inaccurate. It's not to say that he meant any harm by it. It's simply that he didn't know. And that's the problem. We're suffering from a lack of education. And so we're going to have the opportunity to work with him, educate him, and moving forward, have the ability to work with them hand in hand to create something that works for the entire community. Additionally, another thing that we need to think about is how much is it going to cost us to regulate all of the illegal prostitution that's going to come into this county if we take away our brothels? What's it going to cost? $500,000, $600,000 to enact a new vice squad? It's going to be terribly expensive, money that the county frankly doesn't have. If anything, I think that we need to look forward towards the future, towards the good that legal sex work brings to the community. It allows us to have nice new vehicles for the sheriff's office. Those are things that we like. Those are things that we want to keep within our community.
Also, not only do the brothels contribute money to the overall county budget, but also we contribute so much money to the local economy. And that is because so many working girls and the staff that is employed by the brothels live in this county. I've been a resident of Lyon County since I was 13. My grandparents live here. My mom and my mom and brother live here. So my roots go pretty far back because I'm 27 now. So also, like, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. But as I was saying, so the women who work in the brothels and the staff, they're residents of the county. And they spend a lot of their money within the county at the grocery store. The working women need to get their hair done and their nails done. And these are like a lot of expenses throughout the year that really add up and contribute to the local economy. And when you take out the brothels, a lot of that is gone. And as far as like clients go, when they fly in, they have to like get hotels. And I know that there aren't really hotels in Lyon County, but they still eat in Lyon County. If they need stuff for during their visit, they will go get things in Lyon County for their visit. You know, so it's everything combined that contributes to the local economy in Lyon County. And that's really important. It's not just about the tax dollars and things like that. That's obviously very important. But it's also about what's going on with the people who live there and visit. Even the women who tour, they still contribute money to the local economy. And there's a lot of women that have actually bought homes in Lyon County too, in Dayton, in Silver Springs, and Stagecoach specifically. And almost all of our staff lives in Dayton, Stagecoach, and Silver Springs. So that's something to think about. It's not just if you close the brothels, the women's are going to go home to another state. These are people of your community who will lose their jobs and their paychecks.
Activities that you're all involved with also?
Oh man, there's a whole lot of things. Something that a lot of people don't realize about Dennis is that he believed very strongly in giving back to this community. He gave whenever possible, wherever possible, and as often as possible. Just to start with a few examples, the beautiful Dayton Dog Park that the locals get to enjoy was in large funded by Dennis. He allowed for events to happen in the parking lot of his restaurant so this way they could gather up the funds to make that park happen. Let's talk about the local high school marching band. They had t-shirts before Dennis stepped in and made sure that they had uniforms. Before that, they were the only high school in the entire state who didn't have band uniforms. He saw a problem and he fixed it. He threw thousands upon thousands of dollars all over the place. We donated $5,000 to the Boys and Girls Club. We donated an entire truck full of toys to the toy drive that was happening. We've donated food to the food pantry. And these are things that aren't going to cease with Dennis's passing. These are all things that we're still very proud of and plan on continuing to do for the local community. Right now, in fact, we have a donation box in every single parlor of every single brothel, currently collecting money for the Lyon County... the fairground. The Lyon County Fairground is what we're currently raising money for. And as throughout the year, we'll continue to donate towards more and more different organizations. This is something that the brothels do because we care, but it's not often publicized. You won't read about it in the paper. In fact, you probably wouldn't even know half of those things if we weren't having this educational event. But it's something to keep in mind that each and every time that a dollar is spent within the community, it gets spent 5 times over. So every time that a legal sex worker chooses to enter into the local economy, buy a home, purchase her groceries, she's contributing back. And that money gets spent over and over and over. By our estimates, the impact is around $10 million flowing into the local economy due to the legal brothel system. Where would we be without that? We kind of need that money in this county. It's very, very important.
So she pretty much covered the charitable acts that we do, but I just wanted to add, yes, we are legal sex workers, but we are still people that care, and we care about the community. We care about giving back. We care about charitable actions and everything like that. And I want you guys to take away today to like view us more as like whole people and not just the sex worker identity or title. we do care about the community a lot, and that's why we want to give back to the community, and we do whatever we can to do that. And, you know, as I said, I'm from Dayton. You know, I've lived there a long time, and my family still lives there and everything. And it's very important for especially the women and the staff that work in the brothels and live in the county. They care, you know, so much about giving back to everyone. And so it's something that we definitely strive to do on, you know, consistently, and we do it consistently, and it's very important to us.
Great. And I know there was a great story in the Pahrump Valley Times. Dennis also owned 2 brothels in Nye County. And the story in the paper was of the Pahrump Senior Center. And anytime Dennis would go to the senior center to meet with him, he always picked up the tab and bought everybody lunch. And on one day, and this was a few months ago, the lady who runs the senior center, Dennis said, well, what do you guys need? And she said, well, we could really, jokingly, we need a new roof. You know, we could use a new roof. So Dennis immediately wrote a check to donate toward the roof and then went out and helped raise the money, and they have a brand new roof on the Pahrump Center. So it's not just, you know, these examples here. This was just the way Dennis was, and he did that everywhere. Okay, another argument, and I heard this from Mr. Guanasso did a Sunday sermon this Sunday morning, and he made a big issue out of this too, that the presence of the legal brothels in Lyon County hurt property values. The brothels hurt property values. And I don't know how does that affect property values here in Yerington?
Well, I believe we're about an hour and a half away, so I don't think we're affecting your home's property values in any way, shape, or form, negatively or positively. But while we're on the topic about economic growth in this particular county, property values are actually going up from my understanding and research. That's a good thing, right? So one of the reasons why property values are going up is because of this little company called Tesla. Ever hear of them? Big company, huh? Well, did you know that they're located 8 minutes from a legal brothel? Did that stop them from coming to Nevada? No? They're actually here in a brothel owner's business park. Lance Gilman, he brought them here to Nevada, which has benefited all of us. When you look at the list of reasons why companies are not coming to Nevada, at the top of the list is infrastructure. We need better roads, piping, water. You have to go all the way down to number 14 on the list to see that the brothels are affecting in any way, shape, or form. Did you have a comment, or? It's happening now because of a political issue is what's happening. This is politics. Let's not kid ourselves here and call this anything else. Like, let's actually unmask this. What this is politicking at its dirtiest, and it's using my career, Ruby's career, my coworkers' careers as a pawn in a manipulated battle, which is simply unfair and conflating a lot of statistics that are unfortunately not true about us.
Alex? Where is this group that is pushing to have the brothels taken away? Where are they from?
So where is the opposition located? Not in Lyon County. Jason Guanasso, the lawyer who filed all of this, actually lives on a golf course in a completely different county from my understanding. He's not even a local. He doesn't even live here. Neither does Melissa Holland. She doesn't live here either.
Petitions statewide or countywide?
Oh, just countywide. They specifically targeted the counties where Dennis had brothels specifically. Their motion failed in Nye County because they did not obtain enough signatures to force it onto the ballot. Here, they used a dirtier, underhanded tactic in which they essentially forced the commissioners to opt to put the question on the ballot as an advisory question. And that's something that's very important for everyone to understand. As you're voting on Lyon County issue number 1, it is advisory only. The final decision rests in the hands of the commissioners. The opposition wrote their petition in such a way that it would take the final decision out of the hands of the commissioners and make the law written in such a way that it would be very difficult for us to amend it as needed. As a result of that, the commissioners, despite the fact that the opposition did not obtain enough signatures, they chose to go ahead and put it on there as an advisory question regardless. And that's something that we're okay with. We want the people to have an opportunity to have their voice heard. And I have a feeling that it's going to be a very, very resounding no thank you. We'll keep our brothels.
Just as Dennis's campaign manager, I know a little bit about the political aspect of this, so just think about this. Dennis and the brothels never had anything like this before he announced that he was running for office. And it also didn't happen until he switched from being a libertarian to a Republican, where he actually was perceived as a threat of winning. Now, this Jason Guanasso, who's the lawyer that's pushing this, he happens to work for the law firm of our Lieutenant Governor, Mark Hutchison, Hutchison Legal Group. So he works for Hutchison. Hutchison was an ally and did fundraisers for the opponent of Dennis Hoff, James Oscarson, Assemblyman James Oscarson. And coincidentally, the only brothels that they're going after in the only two counties are Nye County, where Dennis was running for office, and Lyon County, where he has the 4 brothels. So that I think it shows what Alice is talking about, why we believe that is political. So, sir.
Chuck, talk to us a little bit about the people impact. How many people are employed at the brothels and associated industry within Lyon County? And talk to me about how many jobs we're actually looking at, that we could be actually looking at losing if the brothels go away.
Okay, we want to talk about the jobs, both as sex workers and otherwise. But I would like you to do that and address this, because I want to get into some of the sheriff's report now, because there was a discrepancy that the sheriff found in his report that he reported that the brothels were claiming they had 134 workers, I think, what was a claim, but they only found 79 work cards. So people have a question. They think that maybe something was going wrong. So could you address that, please?
Absolutely. One thing that we need to consider is the fact that not all of the paid positions, non-sex worker positions, require a legal card in order to work there. For example, the 79 employees do not factor in any of our remote staff that works in IT, does not factor in any of our webmaster staff, nor does it factor in the entirety of the restaurant and all the restaurant staff. By all of those figures added up, we're well at 134 employees. One of the things that we're looking forward to working with the sheriff on is that he too has realized that perhaps these work cards for the employees may not even be necessary. So the fact that he's reporting this discrepancy is virtually irrelevant, since he's considering taking away that as a requirement anyway. When it comes to the jobs, there's 134 positions currently at the Bunny Ranch, the majority of which are filled here locally within the county. That is something that Dennis has always done and something that the company will continue to do. We prioritize hiring those that live here locally in Lyon County. Another thing, too, is to factor in how many of the ladies will be affected. Over the course of the year, somewhere between 200 and 500 individuals will pass through the various sheriff's offices applying for these legal licenses to work at the brothels. Where are those ladies going to go if they don't have a legal brothel to work at? Any ideas? Yeah, the streets. And that is not a scenario you nor I want to have happen. And so instead, by having this legal system, it gives girls an option. And this brings us to another point of the report. There was a notation that a number of the ladies perhaps have had records in regards to independent sex work that have happened in other counties elsewhere. And the sheriff pointed to this and said, aha, see, this shows that there might be trafficking happening. Wait a minute. So you mean somebody choosing to go from doing something criminal to doing it legal means that they're being exploited? How does that add up? It only makes sense that there are going to be folks that do unfortunately have histories. And thankfully, we don't discriminate against that. We have legalization in this county. We have legalization in this state. In the other 49 states, that's not an option. So naturally, we're going to see those things arise. However, in my opinion, those are not signs nor symptoms of human trafficking. a lot of the things that he mentioned in his report as being specific to human sex trafficking indicators are unfortunate because they don't accurately represent what the real risk is. For example, one of the numerous things that he was citing is that ladies moving from brothel to brothel could potentially be an indicator of trafficking. How many people have worked for a large corporation and switched working locations? Say start at Bank A, then move to Bank B. It's a pretty fairly normal it's normal. I can say that within the past year, I personally have switched locations. Within the last year, Ruby has switched locations. So that, 30% of sex workers showing signs of potential human sex trafficking? That includes the two of us simply for changing locations of our own free will. Again, it goes back to showing the fact that this industry is very different than the illegal industry, and as such, we need to treat it like a separate entity and give its own set of qualifiers and things that are specific to what we do and who we are.
Did you have a question?
As long as you're on the sheriff's one, I really like Al McNeil. I think he's done one hell of a job in Lyon County. And what I don't like is, I read your letter that you sent to me, and maybe I misunderstood it, but at the bottom of the letter it said maybe we need a new sheriff.
Yeah, we're looking to have a sheriff that is willing to work with the brothels. And I think that moving forward, as he's gotten to know us a little bit better, I think he's having a bit of a change of heart. I wish so sincerely that he chose to come here tonight and perhaps would be able to speak. But in his absence, I have to go with my gut on this one. And I say that, honestly, after this last conversation and shaking hands with him, I think that he's starting to listen to sex workers and understand that, no, we're not trafficked, and that, no, we're not forced to be here.
He didn't get with you girls and find out what's going on over there.
It's true. With the lack of education comes misunderstanding. And that's why we're here, is to educate. We're not opposing anyone. We're not looking to change anyone's heart. All we're looking to do is present the real facts. Because you figure that those of us that work within this industry, we're the real experts on this industry. We work here. We live here. We do this. And we know this intimately and familiarly. It's something that we're incredibly passionate about. And again, that's why we chose to put together these events. And so this way you guys have the ability to have the accurate information.
I thought it was terrible that writing that letter that they should get rid of a new sheriff, especially when they're running for sheriff. I thought that was terrible.
I also thought it was terrible that the sheriff was unwilling to come and speak to me face to face before making accusations against me, sir. You're right. I did reach out to him. I reached out to him on Facebook. I reached out to him on email. I even shook his hand in person. And only when we met face to face and actually gave me eye contact do I believe that he for the first time saw me as a human being rather than just my job title. That's what it took. It took him actually having to come face to face with me, meet me in person, to realize that I'm a real human being and that, unfortunately, words can hurt. And a lot of the cruel things that the opposition was saying were very, very hurtful. Those images of women being packaged as meat as if we're for sale, is that a kindness? No, that's an offense. But how did we respond to that? We've responded to that through education.
Okay. You mentioned the fact that a previous conviction of prostitution indicates that now they want to do it legally rather than risk arrest. And, I can't remember if you or Ruby was talking about a judge.
Oh yeah, an interesting fact, by the way, is that judges in other counties and states, when they are presented with an individual that is working in the illegal field, they actually tell them about what we have here and encourage them to seek employment at a legal brothel. In fact, I know of one case specifically in which charges against the lady were actually dropped because she chose to enter the legal industry. Other counties wish they had brothels. They only wish that they had them, and we are so lucky to actually have these here in our community.
California, for instance, to do something like this, have a brothel, because it's a safer way, and I think it's great. Everybody needs to have love.
I agree. I think that legalized sex work inevitably will happen nationwide, much in the same way that with the legal cannabis industry. It starts here, though. We have to protect what we have before we can really look forward. And you figure that eventually, as time goes on, and I imagine it will be well within my lifetime, that we will have legal sex work in all 50 states.
So,
In the, I'd like to pick up something here. There's you live in California. You live in the Golden Triangle in San Diego, if you happen to know where that is. It's about the nicest middle-class part of San Diego.
Used to be.
And we have a home-based business, and every day we get checks and things in the mail. She does all that work. In San Diego, the bank was about less than a mile, excuse me, from our house, and she'd walk there. I wouldn't let her walk alone, okay? We were in La Jolla, think of that. I wouldn't let her walk alone. Here, she can go anywhere, as far as I'm concerned. So, to my mind, the way I see what you ladies do, you provide a very valuable social safety valve function that isn't present where prostitution is illegal. That's why I'm here, okay? I find this community to be a very safe place, and while I'm not able to put numbers on it, I know that what they do is a factor in that. So,
thank you very much.
And I want to kind of circle this around, and maybe for some of the folks in this room that might be on the fence, I want them to kind of understand and put this in terms I can understand. Anybody here that works out of Pumpkin Hollow? So we got a couple folks who work at Pumpkin Hollow. Okay, that's for Chuck. That's a large mine right outside of town. Okay, and there's probably a few hundred people that work out there at this point, a couple hundred at least. Okay, so we're talking about, let's say, 400 jobs between the contract sex workers and full-time employees under Mr. Hoff's organization. All right, so if you vote no on this, you've allowed outside interests in Reno and Las Vegas to determine the future of Lyon County. That would be something akin to environmental wackos coming in and saying, Pumpkin Hollow's unsafe, we need to shut it down now. Imagine what that would do to your community. It is outside interests that are promoting what they want to have, what they feel in their mind should be the righteous path for Lyon County. As a Lyon County citizen, that just absolutely offends me.
Thank you.
Offends me.
Thank you.
And I think y'all think of it in those terms. Think of it where you work, and think of what somebody could come in and do, somebody from outside could come in and do to your job. That is what they're trying to do.
exactly.
And the folks that are involved with the organization that are full-time employees. That is exactly what they're trying to do here.
Yes.
And it is incumbent upon us to stop it. Our best way to stop it is to vote no.
Thank you.
Ruby House, I'm not sure. I think one of you mentioned this before we did the one in Mount House last week. The initiative itself is, they have the arguments for and against in the ballot. And to James's point, if they are successful in outlawing the brothels, it's not going to end there, and they say so themselves. Is that correct?
If you've gotten your sample ballot in the mail, I encourage you to take a very, very hard look at the facts and figures that these folks are citing. Because if you look and read in between the words, they're not stopping with the legal brothels. By their own admission, next comes the casinos. Then comes medical marijuana. Then comes the mines. Then comes our guns. They plan to systematically go through and take away freedom after freedom after freedom. The things that make Nevada Nevada and not California are the very things that they're attacking. Like, I literally have the language in front of me here. They're talking about, oh, well, some gambling is legal, but there's also problems with it. Oh, legalization alcohol didn't really solve anything. Oh, there's no reason that we should keep the brothels legal. I'll give you a whole list of reasons to keep the brothels legal. It keeps ladies off of the streets. It keeps us safely employed. It gives us the freedom of choice. It helps the local community on taxation. There are boundless reasons as to how we support our local economy and our local community. And if they were to take us away, it's not going to stop there. They're going to keep going and going and going. And it's only a matter of time before it starts to affect you personally, too. Eventually, what you'll see happening is that your taxes will increase. If you're the extra money is going to have to come from somewhere. If we're not paying it, well, guess who the burden is going to fall upon? The 54,000 residents of Lyon County. And that would be just so shameful, because I feel like we already pay a whole lot in taxes.
Where's the guys gonna go? If the women have to leave the county, where are the guys gonna go? They're still gonna want to buy it. Where are they gonna go? They're gonna go online. They're gonna go online, and they're gonna get real sex trafficked girls. Okay? They're gonna go crime breeds crime, and they're gonna go to where the crime is, and you guys are gonna have to watch it. We're all gonna have to watch all our children, all our girls in the age of 10 to 17, because there's gonna be real pimps out there to take our little girls.
Yes. I was thinking that much right now.
Yeah.
Trafficking and STDs.
Yes, ma'am.
The question is, where do your clients come from?
A number of our clients travel large distances, many times flying from many, many states away. And what that does is it brings new money to the local economy here. When they come here and they decide to be sweet and buy somebody flowers, they're going to the local florist. When they forget their hairbrush or their toothpaste, they're going to the local Walmart. It's additional money flowing in to the community. Some of our residents are also clients. There are locals that also partake in the brothel services, but by and large, the majority are coming from out of state, traveling here for this specific purpose. It's one of the reasons why there's that $10 million figure I was talking about in regards to our impact, because it really is that large when you think about it. The restaurants, the hotels, the food, all sorts of various things that folks are going to have to buy when they travel. And that only serves to benefit local businesses. It's something that I think is actually a boon within this small, tiny little county. You figure there's not a lot of opportunity currently out here for economic growth. The fact that we have these legal brothels allows essentially outsiders to come in, pay some money to us, and help us all out to keep our roads beautiful. That's something that we do rely on, and it's important to factor that in when making these major decisions.
Okay, I kind of wanted to go back to the freedom part of Nevada because we had some questions in between, but I wanted to go back to that really quick. How many longtime Nevadan residents do we have in the room? Yeah, so like almost the whole room. Okay, so the Nevada motto is live and let live, and I believe strongly in that, and it's part of the Nevada. It's part of the Nevada spirit, and that's important to a lot of us Nevadans who have been here a long time. And I just feel like you don't have to agree with what I'm doing or what she's doing or with any of the other women that live in the brothels. I'm not asking to change your moral stance on it. That is your right to view it the way you want to view it. I'm just asking you to let me keep my job. And because it does so much for me in my life, it's paid for my education. It pays for some of my grandma. I help my grandma out sometimes with some things because my grandpa is very sick. They live in Dayton. They are part of your county. And, everything like that, like, it just goes so much further than just, like, is sex work right or wrong? These are our lives, and it's humanity, and I hope that you guys can see that, but live and let live is the Nevada way, and I just ask you to kind of ponder that when the vote comes up.
I want to touch on one other point here from the sheriff's report itself, because this was the big story. The Reno Gazette-Journal did the story that there was. Huh?
But if you have a question about the report, he is here. He's hiding.
Right here.
I'm sure, I can't see.
How can you miss that?
So in the sheriff's report, these were, there was no claim that they had found human trafficking, but that there were these indicators that human trafficking might be going on. And one of them was they found 4 instances where, and I want to quote this, self-disclosed active prostitution arrest without case closure from Las Vegas, Reno, California, and Wisconsin. Indicator is that they are highly likely being controlled by an out-of-region or state pimp. So could you address, I mean, first of all, the fact that it's self-disclosed, I mean, explain a little bit about the process, what it is that you have to disclose when you apply for a work card, and this being included as one of these indicators.
So one thing to keep in mind when we talk about the legal brothel process is that it's a multi-step process, and it's actually very involved. First, it begins with an application online. Then you receive an email to arrange for a phone conversation, essentially a job interview. If you are accepted to work at one of the locations, you then have a start date, which you negotiate out whenever you would like to arrive, and you are required to find your own way to the location. That's a choice. Then, once you actually arrive at the brothel, you choose to visit the doctor. That's something that is legally required by law, but nobody is going to force anybody to walk over to the doctor's office. Everybody visits the doctor completely unattended of their own volition each week. After you attend the doctor's visit, you then have to wait 24 hours to receive your paperwork back that says that you are free and clear to work. Once you have that paperwork in hand, you then take that paperwork, your ID, and then go to the local sheriff's department. At the sheriff's department, we're presented with a form that asks us to disclose any and all potential legal violations, any charges, even potential traffic violations are potentially on there. We additionally disclose any tattoos, any scars, any identifying features, and one of those things is the ability to self-report any current pending issues. When you look at this, these are, again, all choices, and when we're looking at an industry that is illegal in 49 other states, it's only normal and expected that we're going to have folks choosing to switch over to the legal side of things that have formerly worked in the illegal way of doing things. They're making a choice to do it the right way, to pay taxes, to contribute to society. Why would we penalize somebody who's choosing to come here of their own choice? When it comes to these indicators of control, I have a very, very simple solution for that. Why don't we just ask the women themselves? Why don't we just talk to the women and be like, hey, are you here because you want to be here? Yes or no? I mean, to me, that seems like a fairly straightforward process. Trust sex workers, believe sex workers. We know what we want. We know what we choose to do. And again, as Chuck pointed out, these were all self-reported instances. This was, again, a choice the ladies made to disclose this information of their own free volition. Why would we penalize somebody for that? And why would we say, aha, they chose to say this of their own free will as being a potential indicator? One of the problems is that this indicator list is something that is not specific to this industry. Again, we're looking at the fact that we're looking at data from an industry that is otherwise criminalized elsewhere. We simply don't have something specific and applicable to our industry, which is one of the things that I'm really looking forward to developing moving forward with whomever the sheriff may be. And that's something that we're really excited to do. It was a really unique opportunity for us to come together as a community and go, okay, we've identified these holes in the system. Now, how do we go about patching it up and making things work the right way? Our legal system was written for the brothels back in 1976, I believe. And in 1976, we didn't have the internet. We didn't account for things like real ID. We didn't have those factors to worry about. So it's only natural as time has gone on that it's important for us to go through, identify the new issues that have arisen, and fill those gaps when applicable. that's not an indicator that there's anything wrong. If anything, it's an indicator that moving forward, we want to continue to do things right and prevent anyone from entering this industry that's not there of their own free will.
And going beyond that, women who may have come from a background where they were doing illegal sex work, when they choose to come into the brothel and work legally, they're actually being more empowered and becoming more independent by making that choice. Dennis and Suzette have personal bankers come in, credit repair people come in. I know Alice said in the last debate that Dennis helped her buy her first car and gave her advice on how to do that. Investment tips, everything like that. Women are actually learning things beyond the job in the brothels, and they're being helped. So they actually become more empowered, more independent, and that's really important.
And, you know, in a way, you know, some good can come out of this. I mean, there's a silver lining. You know, not the question so much, but the fact that the sheriff's department, and again, remember, this has kind of been misleading the way it's been reported that this was an audit and investigation of the brothels. This was an internal audit done by the sheriff's department of their procedures on how they issue work cards. The brothels don't issue work cards. And so it's a legitimate thing. I don't think anybody in the legal brothel industry is in favor of sex trafficking. So, you know, something good can absolutely come of this. I think the fact that, as Alice said, now she's engaged and the brothels are engaged with the sheriff's department, and now they're talking to each other collaboratively to try to find, okay, there may be a hole here where something could get through, but it shouldn't be a reflection on the brothels themselves or the legal sex industry. It's just a matter of tightening things up in this new world. I mean, it's just a bad thing. And I know, so I think someone said that the Sheriff McNeil came in. I don't want to put him on the spot, but Sheriff, if you'd like to come up and say a few words, we'd love to have you.
Come on, Sheriff. Come on, let's go.
And thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Not as a candidate. No, yeah. Don't get me in trouble with campaign finance laws.
So most of you know me. I'm Al McNeil, the sheriff of Lyon County. You know, I guess what I would say is I thought about this. How many of you believe that every cop has never done illegal drugs? Can't hear me? Is that better? Oh, you got to keep that. How many would believe? I said, how many would believe that cops have, you know, all cops had, no cop had ever done illegal drugs? How about no cop has ever lied on a report? Yeah, I got some oceanfront property for you too. Point being is this, folks. The sheriff's office was mandated in 1990 to start issuing brothel work cards. And this is nothing new. Sheriff Jim Gertz, I think, took over in 92 or 90. Sid Smith took over in his death. Alan Vail took over after about 14 years. And the sheriff's office has not done a good job in vetting the applicants coming through the brothel system. We own it for 28 years. We own it. I would like to think, and I can tell you, I don't think I've ever met you. I've seen you the other day, looking at the applications. I can guarantee I will put my job on the line that Alice, right? Alice is not being trafficked in. I will put my job on the line to say that. I can venture to probably say, is it Ruby is not being trafficked in. Due to the fact that, I don't know where you live, but I do know where you kind of live when we looked at some of the applications. The women that live in Lyon County and in Carson City are not being trafficked in. I just say that. Because the indicators aren't there. They're not there. but we've got about 70% of the applicants coming in from out of state. And that's where the problems lie. It lies in the vetting that we should have been doing for the past 28 years that we haven't been doing. And so when you look at indicators, that's just it. It's like a crime being alleged by a citizen. We have to do the investigation. We have to talk to them. We have to vet them. We have to ask them questions. And we are going to be using the Attorney General's, I think it's a 4-page questionnaire. It deals with behavioral health, economic, some employment questions. And so the idea is that if we go through that checklist with them, those that test positively or screen positively on a simple questionnaire that we're developing now, in that if they have a positive indicator, now I've got to funnel them to a detective. And the detective needs to sit there and do the in-depth interview going down that screening questionnaire. It's going to tie up time.
I can ask if they have husbands, if the husbands have jobs.
I have a question.
So having said that, I mean, so when we looked at this internal audit, we saw the problems that were associated that we weren't doing a good job. It would be no different than in the 1980s where we were doing DUI enforcement. We had to figure out how to do that in the 1980s. 1990s, it was domestic violence and training our deputies and our staff to be better understanding. Today, it's trafficking. It's trafficking of people for sexual exploitation to make sure that they're not getting through our system. Our code, as Alice wrote or read or stated, I think it was 1971 or 2 was when the thing was adopted. She's right. No internet, no fraudulent IDs, no the problems that are associated with identity theft. These are the things that we saw in some of the audits that were coming through in self-disclosure. When we look at a female that self-disclosed an out-of-state arrest for human trafficking, and we didn't pick up on that, there's a problem there. And I think you all can agree with that. There's a problem with that. We have to sit down and do that face-to-face interview. Not with every person, because Alice has to come back every year. We already know who she is. She doesn't flag positive, and it's a quick, simple push through. But it's those ones that are coming from out of state or funneling through Reno, and they're there for 2 or 3 months, or through Las Vegas coming in. Those are the ones that we've got to vet. So I don't know if this is a question and answer session, but.
If you give me a minute.
I'll let you take that. You want me to moderate, or you? I think you've done this before.
Yes, sir.
I have a question to ask, sir.
Okay.
My wife works at Pioneer Crossing. Okay? There's been several reports of people being robbed from this casino, walking out, winning money, walking out to their cars, elderly people. Every incident's been because of the Perrys. You talk about these people coming in here, doing all these checks and stuff. You don't do these checks on these people coming and working for Perry.
Thank you.
I'm a homeowner. Okay? I'm a firefighter 14 and a half years in this state, sir. My dad is an NHP officer that's getting ready to retire after 35 years. Okay? Dennis Hoff was a personal friend of mine. Okay? I've known him very well. He's a very, very smart businessman. Okay? It's a legal business for these people. Same as if you get your tires changed at Les Schwab. Same as you go get your blood pressure checked at the doctor's office. It's legal. So you tell me why in my town, because I'm a homeowner here. I've lived here all my life. My last name's Chichester. Woohoo! So you know my family. Huge. Been here since
Forever.
forever. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you tell me standing up there, sir, why you don't do this shit on people that brings money in this town. They're bringing money too. You don't take Perry. Because let me tell you, there's a lot of illegals in this town robbing people next door. And that's a proven fact. So if you want to answer on that, sir,
I'll be more than happy to answer that. Mr. I don't know your first name, but Mr. Chichester. Eric?
Eric Chichester.
Eric. Anyways, the city of Yerington has its own police department.
Yes, sir.
The city police department is responsible for handling the crimes and the public safety responses inside the jurisdictional limits of the city of Yerington. So in that particular case, the crimes that you're describing outside the casino are well within the jurisdiction of the city of Yerington Police Department.
Yep.
To my knowledge, and I have no direct knowledge of any of these crimes that you're talking about, but those should be handled by the police department. I would voice your concern to Chief Darren Wagner. If you don't get satisfaction there, I would go to the mayor, George Deeney, at that point in time.
Happens every day next door, sir.
So I think we're getting off topic on that.
Of course we are.
I am a sex worker in my county. We recently have to know. I work my birthday. I've lived here in my county for about 5. And my question to you is, you supported sex work when you first started running.
Are you?
Yes. Like this. And you kind of went and supported having about people. What is your position on that now?
So as the sheriff, and I'm the sheriff up here, and I will answer that question as the sheriff, I have a job to enforce the laws as legislated by the Board of County Commissioners as it applies to this particular title. I want to add one thing, because I think most people don't understand. You said you came from Nye County, they shut down the brothels. Are they still shut down? Okay. Okay, but they had the brothels down there. I will tell you this. Most people do not understand that when I put the uniform on, the uniform signifies my oath, my word, my bond. And that doesn't change, regardless of how I may have a personal feeling on a particular topic. I know many people can't understand that. But I will tell you this. In closed-door sessions, I am the only one who sat and did an interview with Mr. Hoff and Madam Suzette about a decade ago. And I know what Mr. Hoff's intent were should he pass away. And that intent was moved into those closed-door discussions with the district attorney, who was in private practice back then, and a county manager who was not the county manager. Because as a detective, now the sheriff, I felt it was important that those words 10 years ago that Mr. Hoff said, this is what I want to happen to my brothels should I die, was conveyed on over. So that was carried over. It's no different than another issue with the NV50. Right now, there appears to be nobody on the license. And as I gave my 2 cents to it, I said, look, we had another bar where the people died. We gave them 6 months to work out the problems and getting that forward. We've established precedent there, and we need to keep that precedence with the NV50 bar. So I'm giving you 2 examples of when I'm the sheriff and I wear that uniform, it's a different world for me. It's basic, it is black and white as how I move forward.
You have limited time, limited resources, as we all do in all of our businesses. So I'm not sure, Paris, if this is where you were going, but it has been going on legally in this town for a long time, as you note, since 1971, 72. And I think the question is, why now did this reach the top of your concern when it had gone on for so long? Was there something that triggered? I think maybe that's where they were going with this. Your concern.
So if I'm asking, the question is, why did we do the audit?
Well, now, why did this, all of a sudden you got murders and things like that? Why did the legal process suddenly reach the top that you felt it was necessary to do the audit?
The audit was stemmed from that first, we had the first of 8 public records requests. The first one started back in December of 2017. We were getting pounded with records requests, requesting prostitute records back 10 years. I mean, we have looked at from the National State Library on retention schedules. They mandate 20 years of retention for prostitute records. Why? I've got boxes and boxes of these things in storage. Why? I mean, we submitted a request to alter that to mere business license applications at 3 years and other work cards. So with the question coming forward, it started to force us to start looking internally and also legislatively at the law and at the code to see we got some major problems with the code. And if the voters want to keep this in place, then we need to work not just with our district attorney, but with the brothel leader industries and fixing those problems to solidify it. Because while no system can guarantee 100% that somebody can't get through the door through trafficking or, as we exposed, underage, the license of issuing an underage prostitute, my greatest fear, getting through that system. And I could explain that to people if they really want to understand that. But we needed to fix it, get it fixed, because I'm the type of person that does not put my head in the sand and wish the world doesn't come by us. We fix the problems once we identify them.
I don't know the answer to this, but maybe you do. So those public record requests that your office received is kind of what put this more on your radar screen. Is the identity of the people who made those public records requests public, or do they make those requests anonymous?
Yeah.
That I don't know. That would be a question the question was whether the public records request names of who requested these things, is that a public record or not? I don't know that answer. That's a question for our district attorney. If he says we have to release those names, we release those names.
Who asked for the records?
I've got groups from Southern Nevada. I've got groups, I think, from back east.
No one in Lyon County.
I
Requested it.
don't think there was anybody from Lyon County.
There we go. There we go.
There's your answer.
Outside influence.
Alice, and then a question for you, Jill. As a retired university teacher, I want to compliment you on a logical, well-thought-out, perfectly constructed letter.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I was very impressed. And for the sheriff, is there any other type of worker that comes into Lyon County that's vetted and licensed like the sex workers are?
Yes. No.
Nope.
Pursuant to the question is there any other worker that is vetted by the sheriff's office? And the answer is no. We are not mandated by any other code or any other law in county code or state law for us to do the vetting. Let me backtrack. The vetting, they're actually, we do background investigations for liquor licenses and business licenses, and I do the background checks for CCW applications. So we do those, but for any other worker, no. We do not do gaming. That is a state law, or the state does the gaming licenses and the employee worker cards for gaming.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm going to ask about the escort services. I mean, there's ads in Reno and Clark County. How do those work? Do they have to get permits, or what's the situation? How do they operate?
So the question is on the escort services. Lyon County Code does not have any code that allows for escort services. The ordinance covers for, I forget the exact term, a house of ill fame, I think it's still called it in state law. Yeah, so, but the Title 3 or Title 5, Chapter 3, in Lyon County Code is what regulates just that particular industry.
So, I mean, technically it is prostitution, right? And the rest of the 48.
Well, it's only supposed to be, I think, escort service and conversation.
That's prostitution.
Yeah.
Paying for a service.
They are regulated, but I think if they cross the line of, if they cross the lines into prostitution, it could be regulated by the jurisdiction that has that ordinance.
So they become competition.
Sheriff, am I understanding you right, listening to you, that the issue has been more the documentation
and the correct way to vet the workers, and the sheriff's department having enough funding to be able to correctly vet people. Is that more the issue right now?
So it's a complex problem. I mean, it's not a one simple answer. When I say a complex problem, I'll go back to one of the real weaknesses we saw in our system is that because of the number of out-of-state people coming in with fraudulent documents, it was possible, and I say possible, we don't know of any case that it did happen where a minor could get a fake, I don't know, Georgia, hopefully nobody's from Georgia out there, fake Georgia driver's license, and it comes into my staff, and they look at the license, it looks good, they do the fingerprints, but because they're a juvenile, no juvenile fingerprints ever go into any database. So we would get back a return, no history, and it would have been possible for us to have issued that particular female that would have been under the age of 18 a license. So that's part of what we're trying to do is shut that down. Some of the documents that we had in the audit, we had one who used a Canadian passport through the application process, and when ICE ran those checks, that passport flagged her. I don't know if it was illegal in the country or flagged her unlawful to be able to work in the country. I don't remember which one it was. But once we got in the brothel with ICE, they sat down and talked to her. She claimed to be a U.S. citizen, and only through making a phone call to the State Department at that particular time were they able to determine that she was actually a U.S. citizen who should not have used the Canadian passport through the application process.
And there's no other occurrence of people using fraudulent ID for any other thing, say to get your driver's license, to vote.
Farm
What,
workers.
I mean, you can come across fraudulent ID anywhere.
Right.
The one case really
What I'm going to go back to is the code mandates that the sheriff vet these individuals and ensure that they are who they are for the purposes of obtaining a work card.
So we basically just need a little bit more resources and a little better vetting.
Well, one of the things that we are doing is that we're working with the industry on January 1st. Right now, we're looking at is that any applicant will either have to get a state-issued real ID card, or a U.S. passport, or a pass card, which is several layers of vetting so the state or the U.S. government vets them. So when they come in, we don't have to vet them.
Let me get this straight. So Las Vegas is asking us how we're doing this because our model works. They have thousands and thousands of massage parlors on Flamingo with thousands and thousands of massage therapists from all over the world, and their system doesn't work. But ours pretty much does, even though it's antiquated, and our model works, man.
Yes, thank you.
There's nothing. You're here.
So one of the things that we are going to do, it's I think about $3,000 for a piece of equipment, to where we can actually then take and validate the ID card or the passport or the pass card as part of that vetting process. So that's a relatively cheap piece of equipment with about $500 of annual upgrades. That's one of my cheaper pieces of equipment that I've got to buy.
Thank you.
We'll put that in the Dayton substation, where that is where the one place that will bring through all the applicants, so we can validate that. The other part that we do plan on doing is for all non-U.S. citizens, they will have to go through the Reno United States Citizen Immigration Service and get a work letter, authorization letter. So they're going to vet them, and then they'll bring that letter to us as part of the application process with their foreign passport, which we can validate under the machine and then process that card. So these are the steps that we've identified to improve the validation of any applicant wishing to obtain a work card.
Because we really don't have a problem with sex trafficking in our brothels, right?
I'm sorry?
We really don't have a problem with sex trafficking in our brothels, in your opinion.
We have indicators, and that's all we have.
No signs.
No.
You don't believe.
What are
You
the
don't believe it,
indicators?
do you?
What are the indicators?
The indicators are when you have a recent prostitution arrest, we need to vet them to make sure that their exploiter is not bringing them in through a system.
I agree with you with that.
And that's exactly what I think Alice is talking about.
I agree with you on that.
Streetwalkers, not brothels.
But yeah, you're getting them from people that are coming in,
Yeah.
not people that are already there.
So,
We can stop them at the door,
yep.
Correct.
like we do at 8 already.
Yes, Travis.
So, Ms. Little, I too was impressed by your letter.
Well, thank you.
One of the statements in there, pastor, Smith Valley Baptist Church. One of the questions that I have about the letter is you said that this campaign is fueled by questionable religious morality. Would you speak to that statement?
Absolutely. So one thing to keep in mind too is that when we look at the initial petition that was filed, the majority of the signatures were coming from pastors, which gives me an indication that this started very much so from a religious, moralistic standpoint. Another thing to keep in mind too is that we have firsthand witness accords that the pastors were passing these petitions through the churches and telling folks that if you did not sign that you were a bad Christian and you were going to hell. So that gives me the idea that unfortunately they were choosing to go about things in a less than genuine way.
You weren't able to verify that yourself.
I have a first-hand witness that specifically says that the documentation was brought forth before the church passed through and that they were requested to sign it.
Did you hear a pastor do that? Did you witness a pastor do that?
My grandma goes to Calvary Church in Dayton, and that's exactly what happened. So
we actually apparently have multiple accords that this did happen. And one thing that I do want to point out on the moralistic and religious side of things is that, show of hands, how many people here knew that at one point in time that the churches actually ran brothels? Yeah, that actually happened. This is a part of our history. Feel free to Google it, look it up. The churches themselves were actually involved in this industry at one point in time. So I find it particularly interesting that folks are now taking this moralistic standpoint. To draw from the Holy Book itself, Jesus said, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." Why are they throwing rocks? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Okay. Ruby wants to get out to watch the baseball game. So, you never live this down. I do want to reiterate something here, though, that Alice said earlier, and I don't know if she said it before you got here or not, Sheriff, but since this all started and the reports of the Sheriff's audit report first came out, I know I met with Suzette today, who was still grieving, but she did tell me that she had reached out and you guys had talked, and it has opened a dialogue. And the sheriff has met with Alice and all. So I think this is a good thing, because nobody wants sex trafficking. And I think having that channel now open is a good thing. And Sheriff, I just want to thank you, for doing that and actually meeting with us and the girls. I wish our opponents would. I wish the people who were pushing us, I wish Jason Guanasso and Melissa Holland, the people who are pushing us, would come to one of these town halls and face these young ladies and make the accusations that they're making on Twitter and on Facebook and on these just obscene ads that they're doing. I wish they would come face these young ladies themselves. With that said, again, Thursday night we're in Fernley. I think next Monday night we'll be at the Dayton Community Center. So anyone who may have expressed an interest to you that wasn't able to be here tonight, let them know. We'll continue this dialogue. And I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, participating in this. And Sheriff, very much thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate it. I'm going to let you guys wrap it up. If you have any closing thoughts or comments, I'll let you guys have it.
My grandmother always said, look for the opportunity in every situation. And in this particular situation, though it may not be ideal, it does present us with a series of very unique opportunities. The first is that we get to meet for the first time, face to face, and actually have a conversation. Come out into the community, introduce ourselves, and get to know who we are a little bit beyond just being sex workers. To tell you a little bit about myself, I'm an animal lover. I have a pair of chihuahuas, a mini pig, a couple of horses that live over at the Bunny Ranch. I love this industry, and I plan to do this as my lifelong career. When I retire from this, I'll likely become a lobbyist for this industry because I believe in it so strongly and passionately. Seeing us as more than just sex workers is such an opportunity for us to come forward, start a new dialogue, make new friendships, and establish new connections going forward, especially with the sheriff's office. It's something that we're really looking forward to. That's not a negative. That's a positive. And so to the opposition, thank you for giving me the opportunity to have my voice be heard.
I just want to end this by saying thank you so much for being out here tonight, whether you're for us or not for us. I hope that we've given you some education and some information so you guys can be better well informed. Me as more of a person, as I said, I'm a master's graduate student. I graduate this spring. I want to get my PhD and I want to become a professor. And then beyond that, I am a world traveler. I've been to 11 countries. I love to read. I do yoga, and I have 2 cats. So that's more about me as something beyond the sex worker identity. And I just hope that you guys, really think about what you're going to vote on, and when that day comes in a couple of weeks, and you take the information that we've given you and spread it with your friends and your family and let them know what you've learned today. And just remember that Nevada is about live and let live, and just keep on holding on to that.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Ruby. And beyond this evening, if you want any additional information beyond what we've talked about here, please go to saveourbrothels.com. There's a lot of information, Q&A, a lot of the life stories of some of the other ladies who work there you'll find very interesting. So that's at saveourbrothels.com. And thank you again for coming this evening.